Hi guys, welcome back to Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast in partnership with Koan, the dedicated OKR platform. Today we're talking all about creating awesome OKRs and the technicalities of a great key result. And this episode, as you'll know, is part of our OKR toolbox of podcasts. It was season 1 content, but we're reworking it to make it more accessible and to help you get started with OKRs. And today I've got Roger with me, and I'm sure you know who he is, but I'll let him give you a brief introduction.
Yeah, sorry guys if you've heard this like a million times, but for anybody just coming straight into this one, and I think we might find a few people kind of want to come straight into this one. So as Jenny said, my name's Roger. I'm the founder of There Be Giants. We've been working in the field of performance for 10 years now, but we've been focusing specifically on OKRs for over 6 years. So we've got quite a lot of experience under our belts collectively on helping both organisations, large and small, to get going with OKRs. So we're really pleased to be able to talk about the art of writing good OKRs today with you.
Great stuff. Last episode, we spoke about how to get started with OKRs, and people are raring to go and they want to get started crafting some great OKRs. So what does a great OKR look like? Okay.
Well, before I jump into that, I'd just like to start off by saying that this is where a lot of people start. You know, they think, let's just write our goals as OKRs and everything else will change. You know, everything else will fall into place. That's not the case. Hopefully, the previous conversation about kind of running a pilot and scoping that out has given some insight on how to do it. However, what I would say is that writing great OKRs is absolutely pivotal to helping them, work for you.
Yeah.
So it is important to invest time and effort into it because it is a skill. It is a skill. And I often find that, should we say, and I think kind of senior teams are worse at this. They think, oh, how hard can it be? Let's just write some. And then you actually see what's been written and you just think, oh, that's not a great one. That's not going to cut the mustard, really. So I'm really pleased to be able to talk through this with you. So in terms of a top-notch objective statement, which is where we'd start, interestingly, it's the objective statements which tend to take longer than the key results, even though the key results, as you'll find out in a few minutes, can actually get quite technical in their focus. It's actually the objective statements which often take a lot more deliberation and discussion and so on and so forth. Even when when the decision's been made as to what the objective should focus on, it's that wording, that language, which people become really passionate about, and rightfully so, I think, because language is really important. It infers the amount of commitment, you might say, and the level of drive behind an objective. And in terms of the features of a great objective statement, I would say it's simply saying what you're going to do and then saying why you're going to do it. So it's what and why. Now, 9 times out of 10, when I see an objective statement that's being written before we've done any training or coaching with a client, it usually just focuses on the what.
Okay.
An example being, increase sales, right? Yeah, okay, that says what you're going to do, but what is that increase in sales going to allow us to do as a result? Is it going to be increased sales so that we have the ability to invest back in the business, or that we can, pay new bonuses, or But the purpose of an objective statement is for the reader to understand what needs to be done at a high level, but B, also feel some degree of motivation, some degree of oomph from it. And the thing is that, and this is a blind spot to a lot of senior teams that I find is really common, is that they will write an objective as they understand it in a way that is meaningful to them. And because they live at that higher level of kind of strategic thinking, they see the connections and they understand that if we increase revenue, we'll be able to, invest back in the business. But the point is that the rest of the business reading that are not party to those regular strategic discussions and making all those strategic connections. And so therefore they could just perceive that as, oh God, they're just sweating us even further. And we just don't understand. And one of the key principles of OKRs is that they should help to connect people. This is all part of alignment. Connect people who are aligning into OKRs with a really strong sense of purpose, and that purpose is often driven by the why. So that's why it's important to expand on. Once you've said what you're going to do, expand on it. Not create war and peace. You can do it within one single sentence, but expand on it just to say why. And all you have to do is you can just use so that. So, increase revenue so that. And if you just put those two words at the end of what you say you're going to do, that then encourages you to expand on why you want to do it.
Just a quick question from me there, when you said about kind of motivating people, would you suggest to our listeners then that they were quite emotive with their objective statements?
I would suggest that they use language which absolutely is culturally acceptable, culturally suitable, a good fit, in other words, for their organisation. I've seen some objective statements that, shall we say, has had quite colourful language in them. And they... they're not for public consumption. These are internal statements. They're not going to go on the website. Yeah. So if you want to say something about we're gonna smash our targets and slay the competition, and use some emotive words like that, because it's gonna push some buttons and for the wider audience, then do it. Absolutely do it. Don't feel like you've got to use kind of, corporate, stale language with these. Make them emotive if that's what culturally works in the organization.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. So I think obviously we've spoke about what makes kind of a top-notch objective statement, and I guess it's a little bit goes back to trial and error as well, like we spoke about in the last episode. And part of the objective statement is then how it links to fantastic key results. So do you want to give us kind of a little bit about key results in this section? We'll obviously speak a little bit more about the technicalities shortly. Yeah, sure.
So, a good key result, basically, it needs to be measurable. So, an objective should be a subjective statement. It should have no measures of any description in it, because that then starts to confuse it as a key result. The key result is where the measures sit. And the best key results are the simplest. You don't need a big, long description. To take that example I was using before, increase revenue so that we can reinvest back in the business. If that's your objective statement, then a suitable key result under that might be increase revenue from X to Y. Or you might go down into a little bit more detail and say, we want to see revenue from this product increase from X to Y, or revenue in this market increase from X to Y. Now, you don't need anything more than that. The best key results are the ones that are brief, that have exactly what they need in them, and that's it. And from those examples that I gave you, there was one really important thing to mention, that I didn't say increase revenue to X. I said increase revenue from X to Y. Okay. So it's really important to have that starting point, that baseline, to show that delta of improvement that you want to do. And this is where I would urge listeners to try and avoid using percentages and use actual numbers, Because if you want to increase sales by 100%, but you're only selling, $1,000 worth of product at the moment, and that means increasing to 2,000, that may not be the sort of growth that you're looking for. You actually may want to go from 1,000, and actually we can go up to 10,000 or 20,000, or which actually percentage-wise is a vast improvement. But percentages can conceal quite a lot. So it in terms of the stretch is far more meaningful when you use actual numbers, actual figures, rather than percentages.
Okay.
Sometimes it's unavoidable to use percentages, but like for instance, if you're going from market, in terms of market share, I would expect to perhaps use a percentage measure there. But in most circumstances, it's best to go for an actual number.
So use them where you need to, really, and avoid them where you can. Yeah. Okay. So something that I'm sure our listeners have probably heard of is lead and lag metrics. So can you just kind of explain a little bit about what you mean by those, and maybe give some examples if you can? Yeah.
So this is where we're getting into the point of the different types of key results. Now, there's kind of like I hate the term hierarchy, but I think here it is appropriate. I think there is a hierarchy of key results, or types of key results, shall I say, where absolutely the best ones that we should be aiming for are outcome-based key results, ones that are a true measure of performance, that they measure impact, that they measure the actual results that are achieved by something that has been done. Yeah, those are without doubt the best types of key results, hugely, because they measure the like I say, the results of what's been done. So they're not measuring activity, they're measuring impact. That's the key distinction. Because if we only have key results which are measuring impact, all we're doing is we're just ticking things off and saying they've been done. Now, I was talking to a very well-known business here in the UK yesterday, and even at a senior level, they were admitting that over the years gone by, they have been really, really poor at actually tracking impact. And they've been popping champagne corks when they've just been delivering things.
Just to do lists.
Yeah, without any measure of whether those things that they were delivering were actually doing what they were designed to do in the first place. Which is in one respect quite scary, but in another respect kind of quite refreshing for their candor anyway, but quite refreshing from the point of view of it's not just it's the big guys don't even get this right. And it is a discipline, it's a shift in mindset. It's a shift in mindset, and for some organizations and people in those organizations, this can be quite threatening, because it's challenging them to move from appearing like they're busy to actually proving themselves. Proving that what they've done really, really has a difference.
And I suppose if you've got the characters that are just doers as well, that just want to get through a list, I suppose that's quite a difficult, like you say, shift for those types of people as well.
That's right. So that's the first level of the hierarchy, if you will. The second level, so that's what we call, oh, by the way, that's what we call a lagging metric. Lagging in that you're measuring something after an event has happened. Okay. And that event being, a go live date, a release date, a launch date. Okay. Whatever it was that you were building is now out there. It's being sold, it's performing, and you want to measure its performance.
So to give like a real life example on that, would that be, say, for example, your new website's gone live and you want to see an uplift in visitors from X to Y within like 3 months or something like that? Would that be a good example on that?
Possibly, yes, because you couldn't possibly measure that before the website goes live. I guess that's a really good example, because I think in the short term that could be classed as a lagging indicator. But me, with my business head on, I would never be satisfied with just leaving it there. I'd want to see then what those visitors are doing and how they convert, and the number of leads leading to, all the way through to sign business. the sign business is the ultimate outcome that we'd be looking for in that situation. But yes, yes, and this is what you raised there is a really good point about the perspective, whose perspective we're looking at this from in the business, because marketing would view, that example, very much as a lagging metric. Yeah? But then others in the business, probably like the executive team, for instance, would view that as perhaps a leading metric. Okay, because it's a, and this nicely brings us into the second one, which is leading metrics. And leading metrics are associated with, we sometimes call them predictors of success. Okay, so they are signs that you're on the right track towards that headline lagging metric that you want to, that performance measure, that ultimate performance measure that you want to use. And sometimes you have to have these leading metrics because you are building something, for instance. And so take that example of building a website. Some of that will involve testing. And you might have a metric around the number of tests that you've run, successful tests. You might have a metric around the bugs, for instance, in it. You might have a metric around this is how granular you want to go in terms of website. I know there's all sorts of analytical data you can use, but something around in the testing, it's maybe not just the number of tests, but it's also how the website performed in tests. Okay. So these are not putting money in the bank, but they are predictors of success, because you want that website to perform really well when it's out there and it's public. So therefore, it performing well in test is really important, but that's a leading indicator. Okay, that's a leading indicator. So where you can, yes, you're still using a metric, and you should still use that principle of we want to get it from X to Y. So your baseline, your start, and you should try and use numbers as opposed to percentages, and all that still applies. The third type in the hierarchy is what we would call milestone key results. Now, these ones are to be used with a health warning, with a caution. Okay, sometimes they are absolutely necessary. They do verge into measuring activity rather than impact. But I believe there is a justification for bringing these into key results. If, for instance, again, to come back to your example of websites, if you're wanting to or needing to report on progress around the build of that website, and you, yes, there'll probably be a project plan, and we're not talking about converting a key result or converting a project plan into a key result and using that. We don't need that level of detail. But what is useful is to have the 100% being, delivery, website live, for instance. But then, then work back in, maybe even sort of, what does 20% progress look like? What does 40%? What does 60%? What does 80%? You don't need to go any more detailed than that. And so if you define those when you build the key result at the beginning, before the period starts, then if you're owning that key result, you report against it and you say, we are 40% complete on this, then it's transparent. It's very clear what that 40% represents. Otherwise, if that statement as to what the milestones mean isn't there, then it's just based on your judgment. Yeah. And nothing else.
Makes sense.
And that's not transparent. And the reason why I think it's important to include this into key results, it comes back to one of the principles which I think we talked about, and if we haven't, we certainly will talk about. And one of the principles that's really important to us, and we encourage clients to kind of take on board when when thinking about where they should use or how they should use OKRs is to use them as a spotlight. Okay, and a spotlight zeroes in, focuses attention on what matters most. And if you're building a website because you need to improve website conversions, your old one isn't cutting it, you need a new one, then the actual activity of building that, I would argue, warrants that spotlight focus. Yeah. It's the criteria for whether something should have an OKR is if it's driving change, growth, or innovation. This is driving both growth potentially.
Yeah,
it's certainly a change for us, and maybe some of the technology in it is innovating. I don't know, so it might actually tick all three boxes. So I would argue that in terms of the activity that is sort of pre-launch. Probably with that example, there's a mix of milestone and leading key results that would be good indicators to show that we're on track, and what we're seeing are good predictors of success. Good predictors of success. So those are the three that I would say are kind of in the hierarchy. Just one final point on why milestones are good is something when we often see in key results that have been written in the early stages of OKRs are key results that are written as binary key results.
Okay.
So you either have, you see a statement, and again, to come back to the example of the website, it might just say, the statement might just say, website has gone live. Now, the way that is written, it either is live or it isn't live. And in terms of reporting against that throughout the quarter, well, is it live yet? The answer is no. But there could be a hell of a lot of work that is going on, and those that are kind of keeping a watching brief on this would want to understand whether that works on track, what stage is it at, so on and so forth. So you can take what might have been written as a binary statement and convert it into a milestone key result, which gives it more transparency and gives it a lot more meaning, and also means that people can understand the progress against it. And also, let's not forget, the person that's owning it, if their work is 99% complete, but they're still showing it zero progress against it because it's written as a binary, then how demoralizing is that? And a final point I'll say on this is, from the point of view of preparing for the following quarter, it's really important to have good OKR data around progress and confidence. Because that helps you forward plan. That helps you plan in advance instead of having to wait until right at the end of the period, to see where we finally finished. So if you've got a load of binaries that are showing no, then that's not great data against which to be confidently planning for the next quarter. So there's another argument for using milestones instead of binaries, I would say.
I think going back to a point you mentioned there about kind of motivation as well, in terms of like projects where it's just go live or not, for example, I think is a capacity issue as well, potentially, because if there's no transparency around the work that's being done in their lead up to that go live date, for example, it's kind of people don't really understand maybe the process. They don't understand what's on that person to be able to deliver as well. So it makes complete sense. Yeah. Okay. So I guess, why does all this matter? And is it just consultants being perfectionists?
Oh, you mean I've made my case already?
Yeah, you pretty much have.
Yeah. Why does it matter? It's because if the OKRs are not written well, and then they kind of lose. They'll be off to a sticky start right from the word go. Okay. And you'll find, if you're owning a key result, for instance, throughout the quarter, if it's not being written well and it's not easy to report on, and it's not clear and it's not transparent, then it's going to become quite frustrating. And it's for you as the owner, but then also for those that need to understand the data that you should be inputting. So it's the way that you write your OKRs goes directly towards the quality of the data that you will gain whilst you're working through the quarter, which, as I've said, can then have knock-on effects around, your ability to then forward plan, which is, a cornerstone of agility. And, it could potentially mean that you have more downtime because you need more time to plan for the next quarter so you actually end up losing OKR time for the next quarter. So maybe what I'm hopefully illustrating there is, good, well-written OKRs can help to improve through the quality of the data, the agility of the organization, and also, your uptime in the next quarter. So you've actually got more time to work on OKRs and have to spend less time on planning because you've had that data in advance, which helps you to do that advanced planning. Yeah,
really interesting. I think as well, just from kind of my point of view, I think the objective statement comes back to inspiration as well. And we've mentioned motivation and inspiration. And I think something we've mentioned in previous Toolbox episode is about the set and forget trap that people potentially fall into. Yeah. So if the objective statement isn't motivating or inspiring from the get-go, it's kind of that lead you down that path quite quickly, I would imagine. So that's right. And the power of the objective statement goes to the heart. It's a leadership challenge in many respects. It's a leadership challenge. I was working with a client a few days ago, and it was a comment made by a member of an executive team. And I was working with him and his team. I wasn't working with the executive team. I was working with him and his team. And he said, why do I need to write it in a way that other people will understand it? Why? My guys will understand it. But that's what he was missing there, was that it doesn't exist in a silo. And unfortunately, that type of thinking has driven a lot of silo working in that organization in the past, and they are seeking to use OKRs to try and break through that. And in the end, he got it. After 3 hours of working through OKRs, and he finally got it. But he started off with that point of view. My guys know what they need to do. Yeah. I don't need to write something engaging and inspiring because they know what they need to do, and they'll just get the job done. Yeah. Yeah. But what he failed to appreciate was actually, his teams, his projects, and his people don't exist in a vacuum. And other parts of the business need to work alongside his teams, need to either work on the same projects as his teams, and may well fall under the objectives that he sets. So therefore, connecting those to the strategic priorities of the business helps to provide something that they can use from a leadership perspective to try and instill a sense of purpose in their people. And who's to say that, the people that, as he said, in his team that will just get on with it, might not actually kind of get on with it a little bit better and a little bit faster and a little bit happier if they did have a sense of purpose. Definitely, yeah. So you only have to look at the stuff that over the past sort of 10 years that's been written around, the fresh look that's been taken on what it takes to motivate people, and what particularly the new sort of generations coming into the workforce really, really value. And it is, that purpose, autonomy, and mastery, as Dan Pink says, and this is what OKRs really helps to do. You've got the purpose from an inspiring objective statement. You've got the autonomy. I'm glad I mentioned this because this is a really good point. You've got the autonomy that comes from having an outcome key result set. All right, an outcome, because the minute you give someone, you present someone with an outcome key result, right, and say, right, I'd like you to try and
work out a way for us to get to that finishing point. We want to get to the other side of the river. Yeah, that's the outcome. And I want to get over there without getting my feet wet. I've no idea how to do it, but you are the experts. You're the expert bridge builder. You're the expert, boat builder, whatever. You work out how to do that, just as long as I can get to the other side without getting my feet wet. That is, that's very different to saying, right, build me a bridge.
Yeah. It's the trust and your belief in your people, isn't it, to deliver?
Yeah, it is. And that, again, comes back to the leadership challenge here. And there is, I think, for some leaders who have been used to kind of working at detail level and perhaps being used to having, shall we say, a fair degree of control, command and control in their style, it's a challenge to them to go, to move from saying, I want to get to here, rather than saying, I want you to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how a key result can work really, really powerfully, really, really powerfully. And the final point about mastery, going back to Dan Pink's 3, purpose, autonomy, mastery. The final thing about mastery is it's part of this test, learn, and adapt.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's absolutely part of agile working. It's absolutely part of certainly how we encourage clients to approach OKRs. And so you're providing teams and individuals with the opportunity to learn and improve every time the cycle goes around.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I'm sure our listeners got a lot out of that in terms of both objective statements and key results. And it was almost like we planned it, because we spoke about silos at the end, and next episode of our toolbox we'll be talking about cross-functional working.
Oh, fantastic.
So we didn't plan it, but you led me in very nicely, so thank you for that. Thanks for joining us again for another great episode of Giant Talk. If you are looking for any kind of support with your objective statements or key results, again, there's lots of resources on therebegiants.com, so check them out there. And we'll see you next time for another great episode. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Jen.